Hello, welcome to your archetype exploration. Today we're exploring the Caregiver Archetype, which is the last archetype of the ego development or preparation phase of the hero's journey. So, right off the bat, I'll introduce the Caregiver as the archetype that creates the bridge between the ego and the soul. And we'll get into why in a moment. So, as usual, just for your mental clarity of what is to come, we're familiarizing ourselves cognitively with the archetype. We do this because having a cognitive understanding and having that part of our brain active allows us to make connections in our own life of where we might see it. It also helps us simply remember things about the archetype so that when we go out into our lives again after this workshop, we're supported to remember patterns that we relate to or specific qualities that the archetype holds, and it supports us to integrate them through action. Of course, if we just stop at rational intellectual awareness, not much integration happens. So that's where we will be experiencing the archetype through visualization and more so in the imagination realm, because that's really where our deep connection to the archetypes live in the unconscious. We can connect to it through symbol, through our own inner realm. And it's a really important part of these webinars because it actually gives us a felt sense of the archetype, how it shows up in us, and what insights it can be giving us in a language that isn't always clear. And yet it's very strong and it stays with us. And it really supports us to make those changes and even just sometimes having awareness in that more kind of right brain, creative, languageless, experiential, throwing out a lot of adjectives right now, but basically we want to use the right brain and the left brain, so to speak, in connecting to these archetypes. Then there will be some journaling prompts, so if you don't have your pen and paper ready, you can grab them. There won't be a group share because this isn't live, but we will also be looking at what we can take away from the archetype webinar and how we can use it to shift patterns that we see in our life. Once again, an archetype is a universally understood symbol, pattern of behavior, or prototype that reoccurs across different cultures and time periods, often found in literature, mythology, and psychology. It can be a character, a plot, a theme, or even an image, and it represents fundamental human experiences and emotions. Essentially, archetypes are the building blocks of stories and symbols that resonate with people on a deep subconscious level. And if you're watching this particular webinar, I'm assuming that you've been called to the Caregiver Archetype. You may also be experiencing this webinar through the membership, so you get access to all of them. But originally, at this point in time, as I'm recording, the webinars are available for singular purchase. And I just want to mention that because it's meaningful which archetypes you're drawn to. All of them have something to offer us, probably especially the ones that we don't feel as if we connect immediately with. Often they've got some really interesting surprises for us. But yeah, just wanted to plant with you that follow that call of the archetypes where you feel like there's something there for you. All right, the hero's journey narrative arc. So as you can see, there's 3 main stages of the hero's journey narrative arc. We're still in the preparation phase before the journey has been taken to meet with soul and the mysteries of life. And in this phase, the task of each of the archetypes supports us to create the skills we need for getting by in the world, for creating an identity. As you can see, the caregiver is the last of them. So the caregiver still is required for a healthy ego, but the connection of the caregiver to the quality of love enables us to transcend into the realm of soul or the mysteries. And it's that ability to remain connected to ego in the form of attachment to people, caring for people, and also being able to care for self. That puts it in this ego development stage. We need those things. It connects us to other people, belonging, community. And yet the transcendental quality of love brings us into the bridge kind of phase that the caregiver is occupying. All right, so as we can see, we've got the Tree of Life symbol. I chose the Celtic Tree of Life, and also the Venus of Willendorf, who is a very, very old figurine representing the mother goddess. And she's also a symbol of fertility, of abundance, of Mother Nature herself, as is the tree, source of sustenance. So these are some images we can already start to connect to when contemplating the caregiver archetype. The myth of the caregiver is the story of the transformative quality of giving, and even at times of sacrifice. Anytime one person takes care of or develops another, the caregiver is there. One symbol of the caregiver is the Tree of Life, which continually feeds and sustains us. This ancient symbol signifies plenty, that there will be plenty for each of us. Mother Earth provides what we need. The caregiver is the archetype of generosity. To the degree that it is active in the higher levels of our psyches and in our cultures, its achievements are abundance and freedom for all. To say something else on the Tree of Life, the Tree of Life is in various traditions also spoken about as the Tree of Knowledge. So if we look back in Genesis, the creation myth of Christianity, Adam and Eve are in the garden, and it's the Tree of Knowledge that has the apple that Eve picks, and therefore they can no longer be in the kingdom of heaven, and humanity was created from that, from the sin of Eve. But the Tree of Knowledge is also that the choice we make to be human, the choice we make to take an adventure. And there's also this representation of the caregiver as a mentor. So someone that mentors someone younger to develop the skills they need, to really develop the individual, develop the ego, as is the phase that we're in. So there's that sense of knowledge and transmission of knowledge that the caregiver can also provide. All right, the goal of the caregiver is to help others and make a difference through love and sacrifice. So the warrior's goal was to make a difference through struggle. That's just a little comparison we can make there. Warrior struggles to make a difference through fight, and the caregiver sacrifices to make a difference. Its fear is selfishness, to be selfish, and also fearing ingratitude from others. Its response to the dragon or the problems that it comes across on its journey is to take care of the dragon, take care of the problem, to attend to it, or to take care of the people that are harmed by the problem. Its task is to give without maiming self or others. We're going to be talking a lot about that. And its gift is compassion and generosity and unconditional love. Many other gifts, but we'll get into them in a moment. All right, so in our strength slide, we have the picture of the Empress in the tarot, and she's one of the major arcana. The Empress represents fertility, abundance, this sense of queendom, motherhood, and I guess being centered in one's own energy, one's own radiance, and links beautifully to the caregiver in terms of fertility, in terms of abundance, very similar to the Tree of Life kind of energy. And also this sense of there is enough, of plenty, and having radiance enough to give with others, but also to give to oneself. This is a nuance that we're going to come across a lot because it's really important to the caregiver both to be giving, but also to be receptive. If you can't receive nourishment, you can't give nourishment. And one of the pitfalls that we'll get to in the next slide is really being in that over caregiving without actually replenishing. Strengths of the caregiver: to create environments that support growth, development, and learning. So teachers fall into this category, coaches, anyone mentoring a young child or developing somebody professionally, an internship. Abundance, generosity, creating safety, belonging, and community. And as we spoke about, a strength is to transition from the concerns of the ego to the concerns of soul and love. So being able to be connected to the ego, anchored in the ego, but we're transitioning from those ego concerns that the warrior is really anchored in a lot of the time, particularly at the lower levels. This is me, separation, these are my people. Whereas the caregiver has enough love and empathy to transcend borders, to transcend different cultural groups. The empathy allows them to transcend beyond their own ego and self-preservation, which can be a strength and also a pitfall. Strengths is selflessness and sacrifice. Once again, connecting to that bridge that it represents of the ego. The ego probably wouldn't sacrifice itself, but the caregiver's that bridge, and unconditional love. Pitfalls: caring without boundaries, which really relates to having an underdeveloped warrior. So caregivers without a healthy warrior will really struggle to say no, will really struggle to put limits or discipline into their caregiving style. And that can also cross over into enabling. So enabling bad behavior because you're just so caring, but you don't show the child or the spouse where the limits are. This can also move into kind of being an empath and not really knowing where you start and the other person finishes, or you know what I mean? Kind of this transference of energy and feeling other people's feelings. And that's one of the reasons I put the picture of the Queen of Cups from the tarot, because the water element represents our emotions. She's the queen of the water element. Cups are the emotional realm. And the emotional realm can get heavy. You know, if we're drowning in our own emotions and the emotions of others, and there's not a clear boundary of, I'm not under the water, I'm on top of the water, or this is my water, this is your water. The Queen of Cups can be that really heavy emotional energy, potentially manipulative, which we'll get to in another pitfall, the smotherer or the devourer, kind of drowning other people with care. But I just want to hone in on that point of the caregiver not really having a strong sense of self. And if the warrior isn't developed, there won't be that clear boundary of self. The caregiver kind of ends up merging. The smotherer, devourer, that is a version of the caregiver when they haven't turned the caregiving inside to themselves. So we can think of, an example would be a mother that's kind of given up her own dreams or her own sense of ambition or voice in life in order to raise a child. And she needs the love of the child in order to feel whole. So she gives and kind of creates this codependency by not letting the child be empowered or do anything on its own. Oh, no, I'll do that for you. I'll do that for you. Going beyond the call of duty with the caring to create this symbiosis so that she can feel full inside. Another version would be a spouse that just wants to be intimate all the time and can't function if the love of the other person isn't constantly there, kind of this anxious attachment dynamic. So these are some pitfalls of the caregiver. Why are we caring? Is it to actually benefit someone else, or is it to make ourselves feel better? Moving on to the next point is often the caregiver is more like a disguise, when really what we need to do is turn that love that we're giving outwards towards our inner orphan or our innocent. And the orphan's drives, for example, can be kind of acting underneath the surface of the caregiving behavior. And you can kind of sense that when people are caring in a way or giving in a way where you feel like it's not selfless and it's not genuine and it isn't supported by anchorage in healthy self-esteem. And there can be a sense of being repelled by that, like this neediness of like, whoa, I don't actually want you to be doing that for me, or even just an intrusive parent or spouse wanting to know everything, coming into your room without knocking, the identity of the caregiver being merged with the object of the caring. And that doesn't support the child or the spouse to develop their own sense of healthy identity. So because the carer who hasn't anchored in their own healthy identity, they haven't done that, they will also take away that healthy development for others. One way they can do that is by living vicariously through the child or the spouse because their own life wasn't lived. A very common example might be mothers that put their children into beauty pageants because they loved modeling or they loved it when they were younger, but because they can no longer do it or they didn't live that life, they're wanting to live that warrior and innocent dream that they had, the dream of the innocent enacted by the warrior or brought into action by the warrior. Their way to experience it is through their child, which once again kind of steals the child of its own path and its own right to say, actually, no, I want to do this. Lots of nuances there. And finally, we have the pitfall of the suffering martyr. Oh, I give, but I never get anything back. Or I do everything for other people, and why can't I get the same? If at any point there are notes that you want to take, or if you want to take a pause and kind of breathe some of that in, please feel free. Examples of the caregiver. There are many, but these are the ones I found in my own exploration. Mary Poppins, she attends to all the unique needs of the children that she's looking after. She knows exactly what to do. She attends to every problem, and she has that magical bag that has the thing that you need at that exact moment. And it somehow she's able to pull from this bag whatever's needed in the moment. So that kind of energy of attending to problems, caring for the dragons, fixing people's problems. And yeah, giving the kids the attention and love that they deserve and need at that age. I suppose she also really represents a very, like a gender stereotype of the carer being a woman and that role of caregiving for children. Of course, it has many other expressions, the caregiver. It's not just related to children and it's not just for women. It is, however, more dominant in women because of socialization and perhaps some biological factors, but it's definitely not limited to women. But Mary Poppins is a great kind of, pop culture example. Next, we have Jesus Christ. And for me, he relates to the caregiver because he sacrificed himself so that everybody else could live, essentially. He died for the sins of other people, that unconditional love. And when we think of his unlimited care towards people, his unlimited compassion, a bit like the Buddha, so the Bodhisattva kind of image, or any prophet that has, a close relationship with God, there tends to be an emphasis on forgiveness. Not always. Some religions are more kind of rooted in the warrior archetype, but Christianity really does have roots in the caregiver archetype, helping the poor, having compassion for those that have suffered, having compassion for your neighbor, for even the people that do wrong by you, and being able to forgive, and forgiveness being a means of relieving sin or relieving burden. It also speaks to the transcendental quality of love. So if Jesus is this symbol of unconditional love, it relates to his ability to transcend the norm. He's able to be be resurrected, from death. He has these supernatural powers because of love. He's able to perform miracles, make the blind man see again, part the seas. That was wrong Bible, sorry. But yeah, there's this quality of love leading to something supernatural or divine, which then leads us into the realm of soul and mystery. And finally, we have Grandmother Willow from Pocahontas. And she really represents the unconditional love, but the mentorship. I'm sure there's many other examples, but she came to me as this real symbol of nature. Obviously, she's a tree, so she's, 100% nature. But she has this role of mentor for Pocahontas, who comes and asks questions, and Willow gives her guidance. That's the word I'm looking for. And in the mentorship, it's not necessarily this sense of telling people what to do. In fact, it's definitely more informed by who is this beautiful, unique individual in front of me, and how can I support them and empower them to follow their heart. That's a healthy caregiver. And Grandma Willow definitely has that energy. Yeah, I think that's it. Caring for the inner child. So once again, all these quotes are from the book Awakening the Heroes Within. Amazing book. It'll be linked somewhere on the content, be it on my website or on the page that you're watching this from. So if you do want to elaborate on all of these teachings and all of this information, I recommend getting that book. Each of us has an inner child who is with us all of our lives. Unless we develop our inner caregiver, we will be always dependent on others to nurture and care for the child inside us. The inner caregiver is attentive to the needs of the inner child, noticing when the child is being bruised or neglected. The inner caregiver expresses unconditional love to our inner child, whatever it does. It will also help suggest and find ways to learn how to better handle difficult situations so we do not get so bruised next time. Often the style of our inner caregiver is reminiscent of that of our parents or other parental figures in our life. This felt really important for me to include because of that second sentence. Unless we develop our inner caregiver, we will always be dependent on others to nurture and care for the child inside us. Yeah, so reminiscent of anxious attachment, potentially. People that haven't developed, I suppose, that tough skin of the orphan or the warrior. Dependency on others for a sense of self-esteem, self-worth, or identity, and not being able to self-soothe and self-nourish, really needing other people, which of course is a very natural, beautiful, human, necessary thing. And it can be denied in a really unhealthy way through the warrior and the orphan archetypes, which are, I guess, themed more around separation. And it is a strength of the caregiver to connect. However, it can drain relationships if it's not two equally worthy, energetically whole individuals. There's going to be a dynamic there, which creates that kind of, drama triangle that the warrior is a big part of. So if you notice in your life that maybe you have behaviors of fragility or anger that come up in order to get attention from other people, in order to get people to care and attend to you, this is a real call for the caregiver to step up into the higher levels of its purpose, which is to turn the loving caregiver towards oneself, to notice when your window of tolerance is lower, to notice when you need to run a bath, to notice when you're getting stressed and to not take a shift that day. The inner caregiver is like your self-care. What's a good word? It's in charge of the self-care. And when that inner caregiver is strong, there's that ability to notice when you're starting to not be as strong and abundant, and when you need to replenish. And it's so easy in today's society, particularly with the over-dominant warrior archetype, which just goes, goes, goes. We need the caregiver to go, whoa, you're burning out. That's enough. And the warrior can actually help us do that. We're going to talk more about how the warrior and the caregiver work together in the next slide. But yeah, I want to hone that point in of the caregiver equaling self-care. And in order to have a healthy caregiver, you have to have the receptive component of being a caregiver and turning the caregiver towards oneself so that we can meet our own needs to a degree. And that helps us have the independence and the autonomy and the ability to re-nourish that's going to support us in the other phases of the hero's journey. Caregiver and the warrior. For me, they are like, the divine union of yin and yang in a way. And they, throughout history and culture, they have been kind of represented as the masculine and the feminine. The warrior has a real representation of being masculine. The caregiver has a real representation of being feminine. And throughout history, there has been a very prominent gender dynamic of the man providing. That's his version of caregiving in a way, but also protecting and getting money and protecting the more vulnerable, which is the mother and the child, and the mother being primarily responsible for the role of attending to the emotional needs of the infant. And we can think of these 4 archetypes in the ego development stage as almost like the perfect little family, like nuclear family vibe, where we have the 2 children of the innocent and the orphan, and the warrior is there to protect them all. The caregiver is to care for them all. So there's this beautiful union of compassion and strength that the parents of the warrior and the caregiver provide for the children, the innocent and the orphan. And this creates a sense of wholeness and balance in the ego, in the psychic self. Even for yourself right now, maybe you can feel into the different ratios or, the different expressions of the innocent, orphan, the warrior, and the caregiver in your life. And you might be able to feel what's missing and what is maybe too overactive, and what you could do to start bringing a sense of coherence into your being. A really common way this might express is the warrior being overly critical, so expressing itself through inner criticism towards the self. And if the caregiver isn't active there, maybe you just get eaten all day by your self-criticism, whereas the caregiver would go, whoa, 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 hang on. You did your best. You'd never done that before, so of course you made a mistake. Or, we shouldn't talk to ourselves like that. There's that loving voice of the caregiver. So if the caregiver voice isn't there, the warrior can kind of take over and not have compassion for self. Whereas the warrior is also there to make sure the caregiver doesn't go out of balance and just let you do anything that you want, or give to others and not turn around to yourself. The warrior, as I said before, can actually be a voice and an advocate for the self and go, whoa, you're giving too much. Stop. Remember to love yourself first. They can wait. So they work together. Implements boundaries from the warrior and the upholding of moral principle, and teaching the child responsibility, teaching the child that they are empowered, they can do things, whereas the caregiver might kind of want to do everything for the child, for example. But a healthy caregiver would take on that mentorship role of maybe holding the hand of the kid as they're learning how to walk. Or, I'll watch you, you try, and if you don't get it the first time, we'll do it again. That would be a really beautiful caregiver voice that supports the empowerment of the inner child. All right, the caregiver, identity and soul. This paragraph is also speaking to the kind of coherent unit of these 4 archetypes and how they work together. The innocent, the orphan, the warrior, and the caregiver all help us find out who we are. The innocent helps us know what we want. The orphan provides a wounding that often defines the shape of our growth. The warrior sets goals and priorities and fights for them, and in this way struggles to create an identity, but it's an identity that we have chosen. The caregiver refines that identity through sacrifice. All of us are required to give our unique gifts to the world, whatever sacrifice this requires. The willingness to do so equips us to enter the mysteries. So something I wanted to highlight here is that the caregiver is the final stage of refining the identity or the ego, because it has to choose what it gives its time to. The caregiver wants to attend to everyone and everything and help everyone and go here and go there and spread its love everywhere, but it's limited, it's a human. So it actually needs to choose. And that's where we learn about sacrifice, and we learn that life isn't always perfect. In order to choose one thing, we do have to let go of another thing. And that grief and that process of moving through inner conflict and making the best decision possible based off who we are and the values that we're holding, and being able to hold the self in love as we do that, that process brings us into the mysteries of life, into the cruelty of life sometimes as well, of why can't we have both? Or why can't we have both at the same time? And nonetheless, the caregiver makes that choice from love, even sacrificing the ego or one's own life to uphold something that it holds with so much love, like a parent might do for a child. I will sacrifice my time, my youth, my career, even my life for my child. And that's a choice. That's a choice that it makes from love. So even now you might think of times in your life that you've made a sacrifice, or what you've sacrificed and why. What was it that you loved so much or believed in or wanted to believe in that you made those sacrifices? And can you see them as strengths? Because sometimes we make sacrifices and we see them as weaknesses. Like, I should have been able to raise my child and pursue my career, for example. But can you see the love and the virtue in the choices that you've made? Maybe it's a medical decision. Maybe it's what you chose to spend your money on, or what you did for 2 years, which wasn't necessarily the best for you, but it was working towards a particular outcome. That's where the warrior and the caregiver can also work together. The warrior, when it's connected to its true values and its why, the why underneath the goal, the caregiver is there of, we're doing this because we love ... Beautiful. To speak on the levels of the caregiver. In its shadow, we have the suffering martyr, the devouring parent, guilt-tripping behavior, enabling and codependence. The call that kind of draws out the need for the caregiver, helps the caregiver develop, is responsibility that requires caring for others. So maybe a cat rocks up on your doorstep and suddenly you need to feed it, or you have a child and you need to look after it. Or maybe you've experienced burnout from being too much of a warrior and you really literally have no choice other than to self-care. And that is the call that enables you to develop the inner caregiver. Level 2 of the caregiver is conflict between your own needs and the needs of others. Also having to sit with those things and develop different forms of the caregiver when you want to give to somebody else because they need something, but it's in conflict with your own. That's a really important phase to be in, because you learn how to develop the warrior and say no. You learn how to attend to your own inner orphan, because maybe you do put someone's need first, but you have to also attend to your own. tendency to sacrifice your needs, and rescuing. Level 2, learning to care for yourself so that caring for others is enriching and not maiming. How can we care in a sustainable way? How can we care in a genuine way, in a way that's anchored in self-esteem? How can we give in a way that we're not handing over our power in order to do so, or handing over our own sustenance in order to do so? Or if we are, to fully own that decision. That's really big on the path of becoming an authentic human. And it requires the clear communication of the warrior, and the heartfelt, the connection to the heart in order to inform that communication from the caregiver, in order to create that sustainability and honesty and authenticity in relationship. Learning tough love, loving through boundaries and limits, because you know it's best for them or for yourself or for the whole. Empowering, not doing for others. Empowering others, not taking away their empowerment by doing everything. Level 3, willingness to care and be responsible for things beyond your own family and friends, community building. So we've spoken a lot about kind of the personal element of the caregiver and the interpersonal, the little micro version of the caregiver, starting within and then moving out into our close relationships. But the caregiver also exists on a societal level. So, the aspects of society that are looking after our roads and making sure that there's a healthcare system, and activists, sending out aid to people that need it. These are equally as valid versions of the caregiver, but of course they come from the individual developing the caregiver, to have that compassion to all get together and make something happen in a grassroots or a government way. Yeah, that's a whole other topic, but a very important one. All right, we have reached our moment of visualization. So as usual, get yourself comfortable. If you want to lie down or stay seated, go ahead. And as you're ready, you can close down your eyes. Take a few breaths and allow the breath to land in the belly. Caring for yourself by attending to any places where you find tension in the body. There's that caregiving capacity to observe and to attune to another. So attune to yourself now. Assess where the tension is. Then respond by seeing if you can relax those different parts of the body or offer them some support. Maybe you grab yourself a cushion or sit up against a wall to support your back. Make any adjustments in a caregiver type way to make things more comfortable and supportive for yourself. Locate your awareness in the heart space, in the physical chest, the breasts, the lungs, and all the sensations that you find here. Connecting to the energy of the heart, of giving and also of receiving love. And noticing now your arms and your hands, which extend from this heart center. And we can think of the arms and the hands as the limbs, the body parts that enact our love in the world through acts of service, through hugging, through holding, through loving touch. And then bringing the awareness into the belly, into the abdomen. And noticing any holding here. Maybe you're sucking in your belly, or there's a sensation that you're still breathing quite in the upper body. And consider the quality of the caregiver of abundance, of plenty. And just see if you can invite more plentifulness, more abundance into the body by relaxing the lower part of the body, relaxing the abdomen, relaxing the pelvis. These are places that we can really store tension when there's a sense of lack or a sense of lack of safety, a lack of belonging. We have the root chakra in the base of the body, at the tip of the tailbone, or at the perineum, depending on where you connect most. So start drawing more of your awareness into the base of the body. Our root chakra represents survival, our family, the earth, and whether we feel safe. They are the foundations of our life, quite like the 4 primary archetypes of ego development. And with your exhales, just send love towards this space, seeing if you can drop into a greater sense of safety and a willingness to let go so that you can receive love and receive abundance. To receive is safe. And also so that you can give freely, knowing that you will have enough for yourself. We can continue this contemplation on abundance by imagining that we have roots from the base of our body moving into the earth, and that we are connected infinitely, abundantly to all of the resources of the earth, quite like the Empress in the tarot card. And start to imagine yourself as a tree rooted in the earth, strong and vital in the trunk of the body, and then free, abundant in the leaves and the branches. And on the branches there are fruits upon which other animals feed. And when the seeds and the leaves fall onto the ground, these materials also nourish the earth, which then nourishes you. As you breathe in and out, see if you can connect to that sense of being nourished by the energy of the earth through the base of the body. And on the exhale, offering out your love, your contribution, your care. See if you can connect more and more to this sense of plentifulness, that there is more than enough, there are infinite resources. And ask yourself internally, how might my life be different if I believed there were infinite resources? If there was enough love, if there was enough money, if I was enough as I am. How might you feel different? You might feel energetic shifts in the body, or receive messages in the form of images. Remain receptive to those things. And imagine now that you're turning all that love, all those resources towards yourself. You might think of areas of your life where you feel undernourished, or certain problems that have been lingering for you emotionally, mentally, practically in your life, but that you haven't felt you've had time or inner resources or attention to give to. And use this moment now with your breath, with your intention and your inner knowing, to give yourself that nourishment through the archetype of the caregiver that is turned inwards. What tools of healing, caring, and mentoring does the inner caregiver provide to you? And what is the tone of voice of the caregiver as it attends to your needs? How is it coaching you to support you to create the shifts you need to, or receive the energy that you need to in the places you need to? How does it touch you, congratulate you? And how is it to receive this support from yourself? You can now ask a question to the caregiver, asking for guidance in a particular area of your life. And remain receptive to what the voice of the caregiver might offer as guidance. And if there's anything you'd like to say to your caregiver, you can do so now. Finish up any internal process that is occurring for you. And if it resonates, you can place hands on the heart space, or maybe one hand on your belly. Feel the life force in your body, the pulsing blood, the vibrations and frequencies and intelligence of the organs. Sensing the abundance of life that is here for you. And feeling that energy come out the palms, radiating out towards the self, and the self being receptive to that nourishing energy. Whenever you're ready, you can come back, open your eyes, and take a few moments to take any notes that felt important for you, anything that you noticed in that process. I'll give just a little bit of time of silence here, but of course, if you need more time, you can pause the video. And I'll be moving on to the journaling questions. Starting with the question, where do I see the caregiver present in my life, in myself, and in others? What is my relationship to giving outside of myself and giving to myself? How unconditionally loving am I towards myself and to the close people in my life? What sacrifices have I made and why? And finally, looking at our takeaways and what we can integrate from the caregiver into our life, we can ask ourselves, do I notice any imbalances in the caregiver in my life? And what shifts would I like to make? And as a follow-up, you could also ask, how could I make those shifts? Or what is one thing I could do? If you need more time, keep writing. That is the end of our webinar. Thank you, and bless your caregiver. Bless all of the archetypes in the ego development phase. Well done, bravo. Soon we will be moving on to the realm of mystery and of soul.